Welcome to The Explainer. You know, this is where we love to dig into complex topics and really break them down into frameworks you can actually use.
So, today we're going to unpack a real masterclass in leadership. We're talking about a chairman who had to answer this exact question, and fast. This isn't theory, it's a real story about pulling a company back from the absolute brink. Get a load of this number. Our $450 million. That was the annual loss for a massive textile company about 35 years ago. And you know, in today's money, that's something like $4.5 billion. I mean, just unthinkable. This was a five-alarm fire, a crisis of epic proportions, and it really sets the stage for what is just an incredible turnaround story. So, here's how we'll break it down. We're going to follow the chairman's journey through these 6 stages, watching how a total crisis becomes a playbook for success. All right, so first up, a company in crisis. And what a crisis it was. This wasn't some small operation. We're talking about the largest company of its kind in the Southern Hemisphere, 32,000 employees. But it was a total recipe for disaster. Think about it. Its factories were just churning out stuff, yarn, fabric, that literally nobody was buying. It was all just getting piled up in warehouses, while the company was just bleeding cash.
So what was the root of the problem? Well, it wasn't the machines, it wasn't the workers on the floor. It was the leadership. The board was completely handcuffed by these outdated instructions from a major shareholder who had passed away. His will basically said certain directors were appointed for life. For life, whether they were any good at their job or not.
Okay, so you've got this absolute mess on your hands. Where do you even begin? Well, the new chairman didn't start with the spreadsheets or the factory floor. Nope, he went straight to the top. His very first move was to take a hard, honest look at the people in the boardroom.
And he did this with a really rigorous skills audit, using a checklist just like this one. He wasn't just asking, are you smart? He was asking, do you have the right skills for this job? What's your track record really look like? And this one is key. Do you actually have the time? You know, were these directors spread too thin on a dozen other boards? Could they really give this crisis the focus it desperately needed?
All right, now that he had a clear picture of who he was working with, the good and the bad, it was time to build the action plan. This is where you stop assessing and start doing.
And this is what that plan looked like. A really clear 4-step playbook. So number 1, that skills audit we just talked about. Then, step 2, and this is so important, he had to check the company's legal documents, the MOI, to make sure the board even had the power to make the big changes needed. Only after that came step 3, getting everyone to agree on one single long-term goal. And then finally, step 4, rebuilding the board with the right people to actually hit that goal.
Now, one of the key tools he used to get this done was something called conciliation. It's a bit different from mediation. See, with mediation, you have a neutral person who just helps two sides talk. But with conciliation, you bring in an expert who can actually look at the mess and suggest a specific answer, guiding everyone toward it. In a crisis like this, it was way more decisive and helped break the gridlock.
So, after locking themselves away for days, they finally agreed on the long-term objective. And, wow, it was a tough one. This meant a massive, painful consolidation. The plan was to modernize everything, which meant reducing the workforce from 32,000 people down to just 4,200. I mean, just imagine that. But this goal, as hard as it was, became their North Star. It was the one thing that would guide every single decision from that point on.
Okay, so this next part is where we move beyond just tactics and spreadsheets and get into real leadership philosophy. See, the chairman knew it wasn't enough to just change the plan on paper. He had to completely change how the board members thought about their own jobs.
And this quote from the chairman himself just says it all. Being the chair is horrific. It's not honorific. I mean, that really captures the weight of it, right? It's not about the fancy title or the status. It's a tough, demanding, and often pretty thankless job.
And here's the analogy he used to really drive that mindset shift home. He asked the board to see themselves as the guardian of a 3-year-old child who'd become parentless. Just think about that for a second. It completely reframes the job. You're not just a director anymore. You're a guardian. You have a profound duty of care for this vulnerable thing that is totally depending on you to survive.
And he had this one simple tactic that was just brilliant. So after a big discussion, you know how everyone just kind of nods and says, yep, agree, yes, chair? Well, he would randomly pick one director and say, okay, explain to us why you're voting yes. Huh. It immediately got rid of that passive head nodding. It forced every single person in that room to actually understand the decision and to own it.
So, this guardian mindset wasn't just some nice idea they talked about in a meeting. The next step was to bake it right into the DNA of the business, into its structure and its day-to-day operations.
So, how did they do that? They rebuilt their entire reputation around two simple, powerful ideas: timeless delivery and quality. That's it. Be relentlessly on time and never, ever compromise on quality. Those became the two things the whole company lived and died by.
And this led to an idea that was, honestly, revolutionary 35 years ago. The chairman pushed for what we now call integrated thinking. The idea that you can't look at a company in silos. Finance over here, sustainability over there. No. It's all one interconnected system, 24/7, where every single thing you do creates a ripple effect somewhere else.
And to make that real, they developed a simple test for every decision. They looked at it through 3 different prisms: the economy, society, and the environment. So for any choice, the questions were, how does this impact our bottom line? How does this impact the community around us? And what's the impact on the environment? This was how they made sure the business was not just profitable, but also responsible.
And this wasn't just talk. It led to incredible real-world innovation. For example, everyone knows making denim for jeans uses a ton of water. So using this 3-prism thinking, they went to a Swiss manufacturer and commissioned them to build a brand new machine that could produce the fabric using thousands of liters less water. And guess what? That machine is still running today. That's sustainable thinking in action. Okay, so let's get to the final chapter, the leader's lasting lesson. After all of that, the painful job cuts, the fights in the boardroom, literally rebuilding the soul of the company, what was the end result of this incredibly tough, multi-year journey? While the turnaround was a massive success. The company became profitable again, it paid off all of its debt, and it was back on top. And you want to know why it worked? Because that one single long-term goal, the one they wrote on a whiteboard in the chairman's office, it never, ever changed. It was the constant that guided every single tough decision they had to make.
And that really brings us to the final, powerful question this whole story leaves us with. A question for anyone in a position of responsibility. Are you just a director, or are you a guardian? Are you just filling a seat, or are you truly looking after the thing you've been put in charge of? It's something to think about.